As usual, to start each episode, I want to begin with a question. And today's question is, why do you believe in the value of paper money? On its own, paper money is just paper, polymer, or any other material, printed with symbols and a seal, tied to an institution that most of the billions of people on this planet have no real control over. By itself, a banknote has no intrinsic value. And yet this game still works, because of collective belief. I go to work and accept my salary in money because I believe I can exchange it for goods. Stores, supermarkets, vendors accept my money because they also believe they can use it to obtain something else. Central banks print money because they believe society will keep believing it has value, or they can force that belief to hold. Governments stand behind it, but in the end, that guarantee is often a promise, not gold, or any real asset sitting behind every banknote. You might say, there's still collateral. But the foundation of money being directly anchored to gold hasn't existed in the same way for a long time, especially since 1971, when Richard Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility into gold. And here's the irony. What many central banks hold as reserves, foreign exchange, often ends up being USD. So the value of paper money isn't in the material it's printed on. It lives in political power, social trust, and the fear of loss if you refuse to believe. Put bluntly, the value of paper money is a global-scale illusion, maintained by law, coercive power, and herd psychology. It's the product of an interlocked system of interests, layer after layer holding up the public's trust in money. Welcome to Unsaid Truths, where you'll hear the truths society doesn't want you to see. You pay taxes in the legal tender of where you live, the Vietnamese dong in Vietnam, the US dollar in America. You can't buy land with Bitcoin if the law doesn't recognize it. In other words, if you want to live legally, you are forced to use the government's money. Salaries and daily spending revolve around it. Businesses pay wages in fiat currency. Supermarkets, markets, banks, bills, everything is built to run on legal tender. The dong, the dollar, the yuan, the ruble, the pound, the euro. If you refuse to use that money, you push yourself outside the transaction system. The state, the central bank, and the institutions that enforce the law protect the existence of the currency. If you print your own money in a country, even if you could convince people to use it for trade, you could still go to prison for undermining the national currency. One thing needs to be clear. The value of money is largely based on belief, though not entirely. And that belief isn't vague. It's backed by institutions. The banking system is where money is created and where it circulates. Banks operate in fiat, credit, savings, international payments. Every official channel runs through it. No mainstream system finances and runs corporate cash flow in some alternative currency. You can own gold, you can own crypto, but to enter the real economy, most of it still has to pass through fiat to gain liquidity and to create dependence on it. Society is structured so that if you don't use fiat, you can't truly transact. You can't buy, you can't sell, and you almost lose your place in social life. From weddings to education, healthcare, production, shopping, everything is tied to fiat currency. Belief in money is no longer personal. It becomes a condition for social survival. Money isn't just a tool, it's a mechanism. Try living one day without using state money. You can't buy food, you can't pay for electricity, water, internet. You can't pay tuition or hospital bills. You can't pay rent or transportation. You can't board a plane, you can't book a room. You can barely do anything. Even if you have gold or crypto, you still have to convert it into official money to survive inside this society. That's the beauty of it. No one needs to hold you at gunpoint. But if you refuse to play, you're pushed out of the game. At that point, it's no longer just belief, it's dependence, programmed and reinforced by habit, law, and convenience. Still, we should be fair. Fiat currency doesn't exist only to control people. It also exists to stabilize an economy and keep society functioning. Without fiat, the order of exchange breaks down, and societies can fall into chaos. Why? Because if a society freely trades using too many different assets, the economic system loses its cohesion. Today you get paid in US dollars, but the supermarket owner dislikes you or dislikes the United States and refuses to accept USD. You're finished. Or you hold Bitcoin, you hold crypto, you take it to the market to buy vegetables, but the vendor doesn't even know what crypto is and refuses to sell to you, so you go hungry. On a larger macro level, if a country isn't independent in its financial and monetary system, it becomes extremely vulnerable, easy to manipulate by other nations or by other powers. Imagine this. You work hard for an entire month and receive something called money. But that money is defined by a group of people on the other side of the planet. Today they say it's worth a kilo of meat, so you accept that. Tomorrow they say it's worth half a kilo, and you still have to accept it. And just like that, you're trapped. That's why, in theory, each nation needs an independent financial and monetary system to avoid being controlled. But in practice, global monetary and financial systems are interdependent, and to be blunt, many of them depend heavily on the US dollar. I'm sharing this to explain the nature of money, not to smear or demonize the fiat system. Now back to the main point. We need to understand this. Money is not an asset. Money is debt. Assets are real things. Our labor, our time, homes, vehicles, machinery, tools. Money is a record of obligation. And when we spend money, at its core, we're exchanging promises with each other. In the modern system, most money is created through credit. Banks and financial institutions expand the money supply through lending. Businesses, governments, and individuals borrow, and money appears as numbers on a screen. But if money is tied to debt, then holding money means holding someone else's obligation. And money only has value as long as others can still repay. The system survives only when everyone still needs money to keep the repayment cycle moving, because money is born from debt. So if nobody works, nobody consumes, nobody borrows, the cycle slows down, then stops, and the system begins to fracture. And since the rise of state institutions, societies have always been layered by class. Simply put, one group owns assets and the tools of production, factories, enterprises, companies. These assets become both a place where money accumulates and a mechanism that moves money. Those who don't own assets have to rely on the only asset they do have, time and labor. Without assets that generate cash flow, they must sell their time and effort every day to earn money. But here's the irony. The money this group earns is still, in part, embedded inside the debt structure of the monetary system. On the surface, money keeps flowing into markets, which means debt keeps being created continuously, and it keeps pouring into assets, the containers that store money. Simply put, money is injected into production and business to drive economic growth, meaning it first flows toward those who control the tools of production. Then, after it circulates through the economy, it tends to flow back into assets, land, stocks, gold, crypto, and more. And this is how money ends up not staying in the pockets of people who don't own assets. In other words, the places that can hold money keep holding more money, and their prices keep rising. Meanwhile, people who live on wages are steadily worn down by inflation, so the system is designed for money to keep moving into places that can store it. You work day after day, month after month, year after year to earn money. But you may not realize that this is also the process of repaying a system. Imagine repaying debt for your entire life while the system keeps generating new debt without stopping. How could you ever finish? Karl Marx saw this dynamic, and he argued for building a society that eliminates exploitation driven by an endlessly expanding debt machine. In that vision, the tools of production and human labor would be shared broadly, rather than a mechanism where money is created to place endless obligation on the working class. Many people who don't understand the philosophical and economic foundations mock socialism as naive, empty, or impossible. But they often miss what socialism claims to be resisting at its core: an endless debt-producing structure. We have to separate the goal from the method. The goal of socialism, in theory, isn't just beautiful. It can be framed as morally and structurally ambitious. It aims to change the nature of society itself, and, by extension, the world. But the truth is, no perfect method has ever been found to reach that ideal. Many countries tried, and many systems revealed flaws and gaps. I'm not qualified to deliver a final judgment on that. I'll go deeper into this in another episode. For now, let's return to today's main question, the nature of money. Money is a set of chains, disguised as a reward. Assets are real. Money, in many cases, is a layer of abstraction. And the middle class, in many ways, is the group carrying the system's weight. They temporarily hold wealth and assets inside the system until debt tightens around them. They earn more than wage laborers, but they often carry more debt. They're professionals, senior office employees, small business owners. They can access investing, land, real estate, cars, consumer loans, stocks. But behind each loan is debt, and sometimes a deeper kind of vulnerability than the working class. They are, in effect, structured to pull money upward from below and concentrate it, temporarily, into assets. Mortgages, consumer loans, credit cards, margin investing in stocks, crypto. And the result is this: debt carried to maintain the appearance of success, an ambiguous class trapped in the middle. They think they have escaped poverty, but in reality, they're held in place. Not poor enough to be supported, not rich enough to walk away. So they become the class that must run the fastest just to stay where they are. And here's what matters most. They become the model the system uses to manufacture desire in the class below. Workers look upward and dream of becoming middle class. The middle class runs non-stop to avoid falling back down. Only the top tier can sit still and benefit from the fact that the two layers beneath them must keep running. The middle class lives with an illusion of financial freedom, while carrying the heaviest burden of the system. When a financial crisis is designed to happen, the system moves to reclaim assets by tightening the debt noose around the middle class. If you can't pay your mortgage, the bank can take your home quickly. Car loans? Same story. A small business owner who put their house or land up as collateral and then hits an economic downturn can lose everything overnight. You build a business, you finally earn real money, and then you pour it into real estate, land lots, financial products, stocks. Real wealth, right? But in a market driven by cycles, a few engineered waves of hype and liquidation can wipe you out. Scary? Yes, but that's the rule of this system. At the top sits the elite, the rule makers who hold the levers of the entire machine. They use tools like interest rates, inflation, and economic cycles to expand debt or to pull it back when it benefits them. If you've ever invested in financial markets, you already know how closely these cycles are tied to macroeconomics. Rates go down, stocks turn green across the board, crypto throws candles into the sky. Rates go up, indexes fall off a cliff. Then come the waves. Speculative land frenzies, gold rushes, oil spikes, real estate bubbles, insurance bubbles, again and again, like scripts that were written in advance. So what's the solution? It's simple, but can anyone actually do it? That's the real question. Simple. Learn the rules and play by the rules. That's how you win. Everyone knows inflation quietly steals your purchasing power. It doesn't knock on your door and demand cash. It simply makes the same amount of money buy less. Today, with a fixed amount, you can buy a full meal. Next month, the same amount buys a smaller portion. The month after that, you need more money just to get back to what used to be normal. And it keeps going. So yes, everyone understands the logic. If you want to protect yourself, you need assets that generate cash flow. And everyone knows assets move in cycles. There's a pump phase, there's a distribution phase. Everyone knows this. But here's the problem. Almost nobody knows the exact moment the top players pump and the exact moment they dump. Some people will say, you don't need the exact second. Can you estimate the time window of each phase? Exactly. That's the key. You don't need to predict the precise day, hour, or minute the market reverses. You only need to recognize the window so you can prepare. And I'll say it clearly, many people can do this. Many people can see it coming. So why do the elites stay rich while everyone below stays trapped? To explain that, let me tell you a story. It's a real story, but I'll keep it simple. In an interview, someone asked Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of our time, "Sir, what's the secret behind your investing success?" Buffett answered immediately, "It's very simple. Buy low, sell high." The room erupted. People laughed, protested, reacted. Everyone jumped like they'd been insulted. And a journalist asked, "Wait, if it's that simple, why do so many people fail while you became so rich?" Buffett answered right away, "Because the truth is, almost nobody wants to get rich slowly. Everyone wants the perfect timing, an all-in move that changes their life overnight. Almost no one wants to build wealth patiently over years. That's the problem. The wealthy accumulate assets slowly. They buy when prices are low, and they wait until prices rise. Most people won't invest long-term for years. They want one trade, one bet, one clean hit, like gambling against the house. And then they're shocked when they lose. Gold spikes, and people rush to buy, lining up for hours, hoping it rises a few more percent so they can flip it tomorrow. But moves like that only matter if your capital is huge. And even then, it may not justify the risk or the obsession. How many people buy cheap land and hold it for 5 or 10 years? Most wait for a hot area, a new project, a land frenzy. Then they borrow, leverage, and rush in, hoping the next wave pushes prices higher so they can flip fast. And then, they get crushed. Everyone wants to beat the house, but if beating the house were easy, it wouldn't be the house. In finance, there's a brutal saying, "Take small bites, so you live long enough to take many." What kills people isn't always ignorance. Sometimes it's simply greed. The end of today's episode may sound a little scattered, but the core message is this. In the next episode, we'll go deeper into the economic cycles of the system. For today, we're done. If this was clear and worth your time, leave a like. And if you want to follow the next episodes, subscribe to the channel. Goodbye for now. See you next time.